Oh, what a hard graft. So well done making it this far on the course. We've been discussing lots of practical knowledge about meditation, yoga, love, God, reincarnation. Now it's time to bring it all together in a process called Bhakti Yoga. This is where it gets practical. So Bhakti Yoga it's a process and an experience right now. You don't have to pop your clogs to have a spiritual experience. We can have it right now, and it can increase and get even better as we go through our spiritual lives. So I'm going to hand over for some more tips from Sutapa.
Some years ago, when I was traveling through India, traveling to many spiritual places and meeting many enlightened spiritual people, I came across one individual and asked him this very question: what should I do to become spiritual? He told me the key is disconnect to connect. Every year, he said, disconnect for 1 month. Every week, disconnect for 1 day. And every day, disconnect for 1 hour. I asked him, what does it mean to disconnect? What do you do when you disconnect? And he shot back at me saying, A, B, C. He said, in that time when you're disconnecting, whether it's an hour in a day in a week, or a month in a year, spend that time, A, associating with spiritual people. People who are actually trying to move forward and understand and develop their deeper consciousness. B, read books, discuss, debate, and actually deeply try to understand the wisdom that has been passed down over thousands of years and hundreds of generations. And C, chant. Daily absorb oneself in the meditation on mantras, on spiritual sound vibrations which free the mind and bring one in contact with the divine. So he said to me, becoming spiritual is very easy. Disconnect to connect. And what do you do when you disconnect? It's as simple as A, B, C. Detachment doesn't mean you don't own anything. It just means nothing owns you. And in this way, the spiritualists in the tradition of the Bhagavad Gita interact with the world and have possessions, have jobs, have cars, have homes, and have material possessions, but utilize them in a spiritual way. There are also certain things that spiritualists do give up in order to engender a greater sense of spiritual awareness and proper character to advance in their spiritual journey. In order to maintain clarity of mind, spiritualists avoid intoxication. In order to maintain a vision of compassion and mercy, spiritualists avoid eating meat and committing violence to animals. In order to avoid greediness and selfishness and dishonesty, spiritualists are careful to avoid activities like gambling. And in order to maintain purity of thought, spiritualists avoid illicit sexual activity. Following these principles, which are actually known as principles of freedom, are not in themselves spiritual, but create a fertile ground for the spiritual process to take effect. And therefore, by adopting and embracing certain lifestyle boundaries, one can actually experience that their spirituality becomes very vibrant very, very quickly. In the world today, we measure success by numbers, a percentage on a test, a position in a ranking, the pounds on a scale, the price tags on our clothes, the people followers on Facebook. We think we're defined by numbers, and by hiking up the numbers, we feel we're in some way more successful. The Bhagavad Gita is all about measuring success from a more qualitative angle. The content of our character, the purity of our consciousness, and the strength of our spiritual connection is the real success of life. A king was once traveling through the forest and he came across the hermitage of a yogi. As he walked into the dwelling, he saw a room which was practically empty with the one yogi sitting in the corner meditating. The king looked at the yogi and asked him, "Who are you?" The yogi replied back confidently and said, "I am a king." Laughing, the king looked at him and said, "If you're a king, my dear yogi, then where are all your armies?" The yogi looked back at the king and said, "I don't need any armies because I don't have any enemies." The king looked at him and said, "My dear yogi, if you're a king, then where's your entire treasury and riches?" The yogi said, "The richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least." The king looked at the yogi and said, "If you're a king, then where is your palace?" The yogi looked back at the king and said, "Well, where is your palace?" The king said, No, I'm just traveling through." And the yogi said, "Me too, just traveling through this world for a few years." The king looked at the yogi and said, "If you're really a king, then where's your queen?" The yogi said, "I'm constantly connected with the Supreme Lord, who's my constant companion, and therefore I'm never alone." The consciousness of the yogi and the spiritual awareness created by his spiritual practice is the mark of a successful life. And therefore, let us not measure success by external, fleeting, temporary measures, but let's measure success by internal purity and internal spiritual connection.
Well, congratulations, you have made it to the end of the course. I hope that you found it very informative and useful, and you're going to go on to practice some of the meditations that we spoke of. And just remember that this isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a journey into higher states of consciousness. So there's one thing, it'll be a bumpy road, as always, and we all need friends, so please keep in touch. See ya.